Hello, I'm Chuck Wolf, Chief Executive for Charles J. Wolf Associates, LLC. As a motivational speaker and a leadership consultant and executive coach and trainer, I often work with very successful people in their companies. Since many can't afford a professional, I volunteer to host a radio talk show called The Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel, on a nonprofit community radio station in Bridgeport, Connecticut, WPKN. My reason for doing the show is to share with as many people as possible this wonderful process for helping people manage their own emotions and their relationships with others. My goal is for everyone listening to learn to use the Emotion Roadmap to make life better. As you listen to me, help others, I hope you are also learning. As a Simsbury resident, I'm delighted to be able to make the show available through Simsbury TV. To learn more, go to my website, www.emotionroadmap.com. Thank you for listening and watching.
Hi, you're listening to Chuck Wolf, The Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel. These are certainly challenging times, creating lots of uncertainty and lots of questions about what happens next and how do we take care of ourselves and our loved ones? How do we stay in touch? How do we communicate? What about social distancing? What about self-quarantining? How do we take care of all the important people in our lives without being able to see them close up and spend time with them or hug them or even just touch them? I want to spend today's show talking to you about some of the things that I've learned over these last several weeks, combined with some of the knowledge that I have about emotional intelligence, the science of emotion, and how it works, and how you might benefit from knowing how it works and how you can apply it to your life in these very uncertain times. This will not be a call-in show. I want to spend time with you sharing the expertise that I have, the expertise that many of my colleagues in the field have shared, and also how to reach out and to look for people and information that you might want to spend time researching and listening to and reading, because they have some ideas and information that I think you'll find very helpful. So the first thing I can tell you is that if you go to Google and you look at Google Alerts, you can type in emotional intelligence to get daily alerts. And a lot of the alerts these days are about how to use emotions effectively in this time with these circumstances and the challenges we face. So if you type in emotional intelligence, you're going to see a lot of information about how people in the field are responding to the situation caused by this coronavirus. So let me tell you a few things that I think will be helpful to you. One of them, the use of technology that you may have already thought about and considered and found really useful, and you're using it today in ways that others may not have considered. So it's important to perhaps share that information with other people. Let me share a couple of ideas with each of you. There is a platform called freeconferencecall.com, and zoom.us is another one, where you can get basic free accounts, which allow you to have face-to-face conversations on computer with people who also have computers anywhere in the world. They have to have access to the internet, of course, but assuming that they have access to the internet, and you download either the Zoom basic platform, which allows you to have conversations up to 45 minutes, or freeconference.com, you can also have free access, really for as long as you want, with video as well as audio connections with people anywhere. So that's one thought. One of the other things that you can use is with Facebook. Facebook has a messenger chat that if you can figure it out online, you can actually talk with people in your family on a regular basis. We're doing that. My wife and I are home. We're self-isolating purposely based on wanting to stay safe and healthy. And yet, at the end of the day, around 5 o'clock or between 5 and 5:30, every day we're having a video chat with our 3 daughters and their families who all live in different places. And it's wonderful. It's a way of staying in touch and hearing about how was everybody's day. And it just feels great. It's not the same, of course, as being with them, but it is something that keeps us connected in ways that we hadn't really done before. We always talk to our daughters regularly, but not every day, and not always all of us together. And that's what's happening now. And so in some ways, it's bringing us closer together. And I hope you see that as helpful and as a strategy that can work for you. So again, let me go through this slowly. So those of you that want to write it down or grab a piece of paper and a pencil, or if you're on a computer or you've got a telephone, smartphone, and you want to type it, however you want to record this. Let me go through it with you again. So first, freeconference.com. Just look up free conference calling on the internet and you should find it. You can download it and a basic account is free. Zoom.us. Basic account is free. It allows you to connect via the internet with others in ways that you're looking right at them. If you're using a computer, it's easier because it's a larger screen. You can do it on your smartphone as well. So I can't give you technical advice on this phone, but I can on this call. But I can tell you that these work and may offer you some comfort in these challenging times. And again, Facebook also has a messenger chat profile program that allows you to connect with the people that are friends of yours and include them in this chat and send out an invitation to talk. And I don't know how many you can talk to, but I know we talk to our 3 daughters, and what happens, whether it's on our phone or it's on the computer, we see the 3 images of our daughters and their children when the children are on the phone with us, or their husbands, and also they can see us because we do this together. One thing I will tell you is that if you are in a home and it's the 2 of you, you're with a partner, don't both go on your phones because there'll be a loud feedback interference that will be screeching and everybody will hear it, and that's very annoying. So go on one device if you're together in the home. I suggest a computer if you have one. With laptops usually have microphones and cameras. You may have a desktop with a microphone and a camera, but that's a little more unusual. So if you have a laptop, typically they have a camera and a microphone built in, and you'll be able to do this. So I hope that's helpful. One of the other things that I want to just say that, again, hopefully this program today, the Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel, is going to help you feel safe and connected. Those are the emotions that I'm hoping to help you with today. So one of the ways that you can feel safer, and this is an important finding, and I checked this out because our information keeps changing, but very recently I saw a doctor on one of the TV shows I was watching who works at I'm not sure if it's Weill Cornell Medical Center in New York, and I know it's one of the premier hospitals treating COVID-19 patients. And what he said he's discovered is that 99% of the people that get the infection, that get the virus, get it from their hands, either touching a person who's infected. Sometimes it could be from a surface where the infection is sitting on a countertop or on a cardboard box or something like that. And they touch their mouth, their nose, or their eyes. And that's 99% of how people get infected. One of the concerns I have is because we live in a somewhat suburban rural area in Connecticut, and we like to go and walk in parks. And I wondered about this idea that the virus can hang in the air for a period of time, and he talked about that. And again, to help you feel safer, not safe, but safer, he said that the chances of getting a virus from another person because the virus hangs in the air is possible. But it almost has to be in a room that's very sort of small, where you're sitting near the person somewhere between 15 to 30 minutes. So if you're simply out on the trail passing someone, you shouldn't have a problem. If you are talking with someone and you're standing close by, that's a different story, especially if you stand and talk with them for a while. But standing and talking 6 feet or farther away sounds pretty safe. And again, it's a moving target what we're learning about this virus, but it was helpful for me to hear that, so I'm passing it along to you. But the key thing, and this is hard to do because I find when watching the video chats, when I'm watching my daughters and myself and my wife, almost all of us, for whatever reason, reach for our faces during the time that we're on the phone together. And we're trying to remind each other to keep our hands together. One of the things that I find is if I lock my hands together and put them on my lap when I'm talking, I'm less likely to take one of my hands without thinking about it and touch my face. But that's the way we get infected, is by touching our face, either the mouth, the nose, or the eyes. That's what I understand. So please do everything you can to try to control your hands from going to your face. One of the fellows that I know who's a doctor, who's a colleague and friend, shared with me that he's trained himself to assume that he always is touching the virus and he never touches his faces with his hand. He said, sometimes if I get an itch on my face, he happens to wear glasses, and he said, I take my glasses off my face and I scratch my face with the handle, with the back of the glasses that sits on my ears. I use that to just scratch my face lightly if I need to. And the other thing I do, he says, is I'm constantly washing my hands. And if I don't have a chance to wash my hands because I'm outdoors or I've gone to pick up the mail or something, before I touch the door handle, I put the sanitation gel that I have with me at all times on my hands, and then we'll go ahead and open the door. If you can open the door by just simply pushing over your elbow instead of touching it with your hands, you're better off. But a lot of doors you have to grab the handle. So those are some medical things that I think help you to feel safe. So again, the show is called The Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And I'm trying to provide information that I think helps you feel safe and connected. So along with some of the medical ideas that doctors are putting forward and some of the excitement that's happening in the partnership between government and companies, I think maybe you heard that there's a new test that's going to be able to let someone know that within 5 to 15 minutes, whether or not they actually test positive or negative for coronavirus. There's also been some drugs, some anti-malarial drugs, that have shown some efficacy in treating this coronavirus, and they're being able to be used according to the FDA guidelines, which have now allowed that to happen in any state in the country. And also, there are some vaccines that are promising, whether Johnson & Johnson, what they announced today, and some other companies that are looking for fast-tracking vaccines, hopefully to have available to us within, hopefully, 6 months to a year. So there's a lot of medical advances happening that I think potentially offer some positive hope. I also listened to Dr. Fauci at the President's briefing on Monday, and what he said was that while the virus is going to continue to be with us, and we probably will see it maybe diminish some in the summer during the warmth of the summertime, we will also probably see it revisit us in November, but he said we will be light years ahead in November than where we were just 2 months ago because of the incredible fast tracking of the FDA to allow for very innovative approaches to both treatment, to test making, and to possible vaccinations. So I think there's good news out there, but in the meantime, all of us have to find ways to get along. And to get along with the people we love the most, but we're with now for inordinate amounts of time, far greater time than we normally spend with our loved ones. And you got to remember, even when you find yourself cooped up and stressed out and anxious, and you're looking for someone to say something to that's ugly, there's only 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of you in the house together. And those are the people that you want to be hitting out at, obviously. And yet, there really isn't anybody else there. So what do you do? How do you manage your own emotions during this very, very challenging time? I listened to a colleague and friend of mine, Mark Brackett. And Mark's the director of the Center for Emotional Intelligence. And he's put on a webinar recently. And you can actually go to the Yale Center of Emotional Intelligence, just Google that. And they're offering free seminars about how to cope during these times. And Mark had some wonderful ideas, some of which were quite straightforward and things that you might already know, but it's good to rethink them. And also, he offers a number of topics. And I want to share with you that I'm hoping to have this webinar that he put out. He did it twice in the last couple of weeks. And he said to me that I'm going to be allowed to take that webinar and use that as my show the following week. So if you want to tune in the following Wednesday, I'm hoping to have Mark Brackett's webinar where he addresses an audience over the internet and talks about ways that he thinks that we can all do better in handling our relationships inside our homes, where many of us are isolated these days, again, with our loved ones. One of the things he suggested, and I think this is a simple one and easy, and yet we don't often do it, is that when we find ourselves tensing up, getting very anxious, and feeling somewhat overwhelmed, is to just take a moment and breathe deeply. Just sit back, sort of relax your shoulders, stretch your neck around a little bit by turning your head side to side and up and down. And then, as calmly as you can, try to let go of everything that's concerning you at the moment and take a deep breath and then breathe out. Take another deep breath and breathe out. And take like 10 breaths until you feel yourself starting to calm down a bit. Now, one of the things that you've heard me talk about on this show is this idea that if you know something that triggers you is happening to you and you feel the trigger starting to create a reaction in you that you're very familiar with. It's a reaction you've had in the past, and that reaction almost always leads to negative events coming that are partly a result of how you react to these things. He suggests that you try to catch yourself as you're starting to experience a trigger of any kind, especially a familiar one, and just pull back and try to take a moment and call it a timeout. In sports, they talk about timeout. Take a timeout. Not a timeout to punish yourself or to punish anyone else, but a timeout to kind of catch your breath, think about what's happening to you and why, and what you can do to address it. The emotion roadmap, of course, is about if you're not feeling the way you want to feel, if what you are feeling isn't helpful, think about what would be ideal to feel and how do I create that. Now, I'm going to be giving a talk. Actually, the talks will have happened by the time you hear my show. And the talks are, in part, going to be how to help business leaders think about what they can do for the people impacted in their businesses, in their organizations, on their teams, and how they're experiencing what's happening to them at work. And also, are there things that business leaders might say to help with family relationships as well, especially family-owned businesses. So I want you to think about being in the workplace with people where everybody's stressed, or being at home, same thing, in case you need to be one of these people that are self-isolating, because really only essential workers should be out and working in some kind of organizational setting that isn't your home. So if you're either in an organizational setting where you're considered an essential worker and you're working alongside people who everyone, again, is feeling very stressed, as you know, or you're at home where people are really working hard to get along with each other, let's talk about some ways that you can get along better with everybody. One of the things that happens to people when an emotion triggers a heightened response, it lasts for a while, but it doesn't always stay high. But then something happens. We can only feel a certain high level of emotion for a period of time before it kind of tails off. But something can cause it to spike again. And that could be a colleague saying something to you that's you find somehow irritating, or challenging, or questioning something that you've done. Or it could be the same kinds of things happening at home. So how do you address that? Well, one of the things that you want to do is kind of focus on how you're receiving that information. What's happening to you? What's going on inside your body? Where are you feeling it? How are you feeling it? And what can you do about it? Without just reacting, trying to process these things, sort of a metaconscious level, sort of an out-of-body experience, kind of trying to rise above the circumstance and look down at yourself and say, wait a minute, before I just react, can I see myself being the best version of me? That's possible. Can I have some control over what's going on inside of me, what my body's experiencing, what my feelings are telling me I need to do? And instead of just reacting, is there some way I can use whatever I might have learned, wherever I've learned it, to regulate myself, to influence the emotions other people are having? What are some ways to do that? So, as I said, one of the things Mark suggested in his workshop today, or webinar, was deep breathing. That's one. Another is to recognize the feeling that you're having, and if you immediately know that this is not a helpful feeling, remember, that's what this show's all about, is to take the wheel and control how you feel. Asking yourself, wait a minute, what do I want to feel instead right now? And whoever it is that's talking to me, whoever else that's agitated, that's in the room with me, that's saying something, are they just looking to pick a fight because they're so upset themselves? Are they really concerned with something I did? What's really going on here before I just react to it? And whatever it might be, is there some way that I can de-escalate the situation? So I think one of the things you want to be asking yourself is before you just act on whatever it is you're feeling. Viktor Frankl had a wonderful quote that says, between every event, there's a moment before we react to that event. And in that moment of time, we have a choice to make. We can choose to react as if we're just not thoughtful at all, and whatever stimulus we experience, we just react to it without thinking. Or we can intervene and think about how we want to react to that stimulus, and maybe measure our response, be more appropriate in our response, be more effective in how we handle this, how we handle ourselves and how we deal with others. Now, another technique I found really useful is this idea of active listening. Now, some of you may think you know what active listening means, and maybe you've been taught this in some other place in your life at one point or another, possibly in management training, team training. I mean, there's places and organizations where that kind of training is taught. It's often taught for you to use with customers, salespeople learn it, but people also learn it as leaders. And yet, I find very few people do it. So I want to spend a few moments with you talking about how to really listen to the people at home in ways that maybe you haven't listened in years. You know, I think when we first meet someone that we like a lot, potentially think we could have a long-term relationship with and maybe even want to marry at some point, that we're incredibly focused on all the things they say, how they say them, what they care about, what's important to them. We highly value them, we respect them immensely, and we enjoy being with them. And over time, if it works out, we love them. Now, let's say you've been together, though, for a long period of time now. And long can seem like a year or 5 years or 50 years. And so you sort of know who they are now in ways that obviously you didn't when you were first meeting. And maybe you sort of don't listen the way you might have in the past. And I'm suggesting to you that you stop your own thoughts. When somebody that you care about in your home, child, a parent who might live with you, a spouse, a partner, a friend, a relative, whoever might be in your home where you're isolated, stop when they've got something to say and just listen. And as you're listening, really listen for what their intent is, not just what their words say. Because sometimes intent and words are not the same. Listen to how they're feeling. Listen to the words they're saying. Sometimes they're aligned, others not so much. And as you're listening to them, to make sure that you're really hearing them and they know how hard you're listening. it demonstrates how much you care about them, how much you value them, how much you respect them, how important it is for you to let them know that they are being heard. And the way you let them know that is you repeat back to them what you're hearing them say. Not word for word, but you try to summarize what you've heard. So if you've been listening to me talk for a little while, your summary might be, so Chuck, you think it's really important for people to really, really listen to another person and to make sure you understand what they intend. And that's it. And what you'll get from me is, yeah, that's exact, and you'll get a head nod. And when you get a head nod from the other person, that means that, yes, I've been heard. You got that right. Or, now this is really interesting. Again, this is to help you with as an active listener. You might actually repeat back very effectively what you heard, but then they might say, well, that's part of it, but that's not really what I meant. And then you'll tell you what they really intended. And it's not that you got that wrong. You might have got it exactly right, but they weren't clear when they were speaking to you about what they wanted to say. And as you reflect back to them what you heard, they realize that they're not being as clear as they need to be. Now, they may blame you for not hearing them, and yet there's no blame to be placed. It's really just about you helping them get more clear about what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and what they're saying. And by you reflecting to them until you get a head nod, you are helping them to get clear. And that's incredibly valuable to people. So one of the things that you can do with people is to simply listen to them. Now, here's another place where people have relationship problems when they're stuck at home for a long time. So let's assume that you've listened to somebody and they sometimes they're just astounded that you've taken this kind of time and paid attention to them in this way because maybe you haven't in years. And by the way, again, it's not just with one person in your home. If you've got children, do it with your children. Do it with your parent. Even though they're saying things that you might have heard 1,000 times, do it until they're finished. And allow them to feel good about the fact that you love them, you care about them, and you are willing to take the time to really hear them. Now, here's a tricky thing that happens a lot of the time. You've heard them, it's a beautiful thing, you feel good, you were able to achieve what you were hoping to achieve, and yet there's something that's nagging at you. And what's nagging is that they presented you with a problem. Because a lot of times people like to talk to each other about things that they're concerned about, and it sounds like a problem. And so many of us, as we listen to each other, if we really listen and we hear a problem being raised, we want to solve it. Right? Can you all kind of, in your own mind, picture anybody that's talked to you recently and how you wanted to solve whatever it was that they suggested was a concern of theirs that showed up as a problem to be solved for you? Now, let me tell you what happens. Now, this is from years ago. I used to be a therapist, and what I found was that I could hear what people needed to do different pretty early on in the relationship I'd have with a new patient. But I also learned from the education I had as a therapist and also real-life experience that if I told somebody too soon what I was hearing and what they needed to do different, they wouldn't respond positively. Lots of things would happen, but they would have a negative reaction. And I don't want to talk about therapy. I want to talk about what happens in real life to each of you. If you are talking to someone and you have an obvious answer to their problem pop into your mind as you're listening, and you wait till you do a really good job after listening, and when they're done, you tell them, well, here's what you do to solve that. If it's something that was obvious to you right away, and you think that they're a smart person at all, don't you think they might have considered what you're about to say? We don't often stop and think that, and yet chances are they may have already thought about what you're about to tell them, and when you actually say it, they say, well, Chuck, that was interesting, but I've already thought about that, and that wouldn't work. Or I tried that, and that doesn't work. And then you try to say a little bit more about why you think it will work, and then pretty soon you're arguing. Now, this happens a lot to many people. And you might recognize in your own life that when you've tried to solve problems or someone has come to you with a problem that they said, can you help me with this? And you realize that when you try to help them, you end up arguing with them and it just ends badly. So let me give you a tip again on relationships that will help you if you can remember this. So this one you might want to write down. It's really important and it really helps. So here's how it works. Someone presents you with a problem and you help them. You help them think it through by being reflective. And even if they've said things to you that you repeated exactly word for word back to them, and they say, no, that's not what I said. They don't mean that's not what they said. They might mean that, but they're not right. What they mean actually is that it's not what they meant. And so by you reflecting back to them, they get clear on what they meant. That by itself is enormously helpful. And then, as I said, if it seems like it's a problem and you want to offer a solution, before you offer a solution, this is the first step you should take. Ask them, well, given what you're thinking about doing, what have you considered trying already? And as they tell you what they've considered trying already and why they may have dismissed certain ideas, you'll know not to suggest that later, won't you? Because if they talk about the things that you thought you were being clever and you thought right away of certain ideas about how to address this issue, and they tell you that they thought of that too, but they didn't have any success with it. Now you've heard that. And they say, well, those are the things that I tried that didn't work. Well, the next question you want to ask them is there anything else you're thinking about trying? And as you listen to them talk about ideas they might have about what they could do, if something sounds great to you, you reinforce that for them. Hey, that sounds like a really good idea. What comes next? And you might help them at that point sort of solve their own situation. Everybody loves a solution that they come up with themselves. If somebody gives them a solution, they might like it, think about it, but chances are they won't do it. It's not their own. And that's not true about everybody, but it's often true. So if you can help them discover inside themselves an opportunity to solve the problem themselves with the potential idea that they are ruminating about, thinking about, trying to understand themselves whether this might work, and you can help them with that, that'll work. But the other possibility is they say, you know what, I have no idea what to do next. At which point, if your idea and your thought hasn't been shared by them, you ask permission, and this is really critical too. You ask, would you mind if I offered you an idea or two that kind of occurred to me as I listened to you? And they'd say one of two things, and this is important again. The first thing they might say is, you know what? No, I'm good. I just wanted to talk about it, and I want to think about it some more. But thanks. And if I change my mind, I'll come back and ask you later. Okay. Now you don't get the big opportunity to, swoop in with an idea that's going to save the day. Okay. Now, having said that, there's also the second possibility is that they say, sure, I'd really like to hear what you think. At which point you can say, well, here's what I'm thinking based on what you told me. So I think I understood what you said. And if I got that right, which it seemed like I did, then what about thinking about it this way? And don't go full into the full explanation. Sort of like open it up with a couple of sentences, see how they respond, and see. I think it's really important, even at this point, that they kind of work with you instead of you just tell them how to do it. So you introduce the idea of what you're thinking about, and then allow them to have a role in working with you in the conversation to kind of work through it. So I hope that's helpful at a level of trying to help with relationships in the home. That's a couple of key things. So one is really, really focus on who it is that's in front of you and what they're saying to you, and spend an inordinate amount of time focused, looking right at them, really listening hard, blocking out any thoughts you might have about other things you want to be doing right now, and just focus on what are they saying, and what are they really saying, and what are they intending, and what are they feeling even. And when you come across as somebody that really listens hard to them, people really respond well to that. And if you don't try and solve the problem for them, they respond even better to that. But if you offer to be helpful, if they're interested in your help and they want your help and you can help them, even better. But it's all staged as a way of thinking about how to maintain really great relationships. And I think you'll find it really interesting. And you'll get to know the people in your family in different ways if you really stop your own thoughts and your own ideas and your own needs and just start focusing on the people around you in very loving ways to try to get to know them better. It works in the workplace too. Not that they want to have loving relationships in the workplace. That can happen, but hopefully not if you're already engaged and married. So you want them to feel cared about, though, in the workplace. Not necessarily loving relationships, but just caring relationships. Okay, so that's part of it. The other part that I think is really important is the idea that you and the people that are close to you have things that make you happy. Now, what makes people happy? There's a lot written about this, and I actually teach about this at times. But have you thought about what makes you happy? What are the things that you can do at home especially, that you know make you happy? Make a list of them. Make a list of the things that you can do that make you happy at home, that are possible. My guess is you may have books hidden away someplace that you said you were going to read sometime. My guess is you may have on-demand shows that you've watched in the past that make you smile, that make you laugh. My guess is you have even board games someplace in your home or video games that you've played that you really enjoy, that are fun, that you can do either with someone or on your own in your home. You might enjoy writing, creative writing. You might enjoy poetry, reading poetry, writing poetry. You might want to start, with if you have crayons in your home, drawing. I mean, it's a chance to do things that we may have at different points in our life thought we might have some interest in, but never really seemed to have the time. So make a list of all the things that are possible, and then start thinking about doing some of those things and see if they really do make you feel good. See if they do create a sense of happiness, a sense of joy. See which ones have the most impact, and make sure you do more of them. Because one of the things that we want to do in this show is to take the wheel and control how we feel. If we're stuck in our homes and we can't really get out very often, and we can't do very much inside, other than the things that we've normally done all the time when we had less time, we need some alternatives. And I'm suggesting that you create a list of things you enjoy. And then ask people in your family about the things they enjoy. Work with them to create this list for them. And then see if there's some things that you might want to do together and encourage them to do some of the things on their own, just like I'm encouraging you to do. Because the more we feel anxious around what's happening, the more we feel kind of stuck. Now, we might have a big house, or we might have a couple of rooms, or we might be in a one-bedroom or just a studio that we live in and no place to go. So a lot of what happens, it isn't about how big your house is or how big your estate is or how small your apartment is. It's what's going on inside your head that matters. That's the key. How do you influence how you're feeling? How do you change your feelings to being more positive, higher energy, instead of being more negative and lower energy? How do you do that? We've been teaching this for the last 10 or 11 years. Well, this is our 11th year now. So I'm hoping that you've got some ideas on your own. I'm trying to share with you some best practices for getting things that make you happy. Now, some people are very, some people like to do things to just enjoy life. They just enjoy their relationships, their family members. So one of the things that you can do, one of the things that I find that I'm doing more of these days, is putting down a list of people that I love to talk to. And think about the people in your life that are regularly there, that you count on to cheer you up, or you count on to help you with a tough decision, or you count on to help you with financial matters, or you count on to talk about TV shows or baseball games, or think about the people in your life that you find important for different aspects of relationships that are meaningful to you. Make a list of all those people. Think about who you've talked to recently and who you might want to talk to. Think about the people in your life who might be stuck in places like nursing homes or assisted living, who really can't get out at all. And if there are people that are important to you and you call them once every several months just to check in, maybe you call them once a week now. Maybe you touch in a little more often. Not just for them, for you too. Because it feels good to be connected. It feels good to be connected to people that we might not talk to regularly. I have cousins that I really care about that I haven't talked to in a long time. I'm thinking about picking up the phone and calling them. My uncle who's in a nursing home, I adore. I hadn't talked to him in a little while. I called him yesterday. I'm just saying, think about the people that you feel like are important in your life, but you don't seem to have the time to connect with. This is the time to make that happen. So another thing you can do is not only make a list of the things that you enjoy doing, think about the people you enjoy doing things with. And think about reaching out to them on a somewhat regular basis. It doesn't have to be something critical that you're calling them about. How are you today? How was your week? What did you watch on TV this week? I know you watch a lot of TV. What did you watch? What are you enjoying? What movie did you just watch? Tell me why you liked it. Who was the star? Who starred in that? What was it about? You know, it's just a conversation. It doesn't have a purpose beyond just two people who care about each other, hearing about each other's days. So keep in mind some of these things as tactical ways to embrace what's happening to us. Embrace the change. Adapt to it. Thrive in it. Don't fight it. Learn how to make it work for you. Our emotions often are compelling in different ways to us. Sometimes we feel like we're trapped, but that trapped feeling is what's going on inside our head. It's not a physical trap, it's a mental trap. And I'm suggesting ways to break out of that trap. And even though you may have a one-room studio that you're in, you can find ways to make it broader and wider and larger by allowing what's inside your head to grow and adapt and to thrive in this change. Now, what about those people that don't really have any time? I've been talking to a lot of people because a lot of people that listen to this show, many of whom are retired, some of them are just kind of stuck in their homes, had full-time jobs, they aren't working anymore. But there are plenty of families out there right now that are overwhelmed. They're scared and they're overwhelmed. These are people who both parents are working, it's a one-parent family. They've got children. They're supposed to teach their children. They're supposed to do their jobs. They're supposed to somehow do all the household chores at the same time. Everything's going on, and none of this is possible to get right every day. And so one of the things that I want to suggest is to be smart about what you're feeling, even in those circumstances. And what I mean is, fear is important. People are dying from this virus. We know that. So one of the things that you want is to recognize that fear is a warning to be as careful as you possibly can. Wipe everything down. Stay socially isolated. Don't let people within 6 feet of you or your family members. I know some people don't think it's important and they think they're invulnerable, but you create risk that is unnecessary. So be really smart and pay attention to fear. Fear is legitimate. It's a reasonable feeling at this point in time, given what's going on, and so is feeling overwhelmed. And so I say to all of you, this isn't about finding what to do with your time, because you don't have time. So what I suggest to each of you is that you recognize and accept that you're not going to get everything done perfectly. There's a whole show I did on just good enough. But that's for perfectionists. This isn't about perfection. This is just trying to get done what seems so incredibly important at every level of your life right now, and not the time to do it. So fear is legitimate. Overwhelmed is legitimate. But anxious and depressed and sad and angry, those are secondary feelings that partly show up as a result of people asking you to do the impossible, of you knowing that you are supposed to get certain things done and you can't. And so one of the things that I think is incredibly important for each of you is to be forgiving of yourself. Allow yourself the luxury of knowing you are a really good, valuable, wonderful person who is going to do the very best that you can, and that that's going to be good enough. And people are going to accept that. Now, it's true. There might be a few people that don't at some point. I mean, that's reality. But you know what? For most of us, most of the time, people are going to accept that everybody's doing the best they can and that that's good enough. And you need to feel that that's good enough. Again, remember, this is about what's going on in your own head. So, of course, you're not going to be able to do everything that's asked of you. That goes with the territory. But you know what is critically important? Is that you show up, especially as a parent, to children as a role model for when times are tough, you get tough, you do what you can, you accept the inevitable when it is inevitable, you get creative, and you hopefully find breakthrough ways to get lots more done than maybe you thought was possible, but everything isn't going to get done, and that's okay. And you need to accept that for yourself, and you need to forgive yourself for not being able to do everything for everyone. That's so important that you are able to balance this. And you know what? When you are thinking about how important it is that you reach out to all these other people and you help all these other people feel good about their day and themselves, if you're feeling down and you're feeling low, don't call those people. And I don't mean that to be selfish, but call the person or people that lift you up. Who we hang around with, who we talk to, influences how we feel. Now, when you're feeling strong and you're happy and you've had a great day, then you can reach out to the people in your circle that might benefit from you having a great day. And that emotional contagion of positivity you can bring to them is powerful medicine for them to feel better themselves. But do it on your good days, not on days when you're down. And if you don't have too many good days right now, then don't do it at all. Keep yourself together as best you can. These are challenging times. Learn what works for you. Learn how to adapt. Learn what makes sense. Take care of yourself. There's a metaphor I always like when I think about behaving in a way where you need to take care of yourself. In an airplane, when an airplane loses oxygen, the flight attendants at the beginning of the flight will tell you that if oxygen masks drop and you're sitting with your child and your parents sitting with your child, your instinct will be to put the mask on your child first, to reach out and do for him. But if you don't get that done in time, you pass out and your child passes out. Take care of yourself first so you can help your child. Get that mask on you so you're breathing while you're helping your child. So take care of yourselves, all of you who are listening, who are overwhelmed and fearful. Those are legitimate feelings. They make sense. Manage the fear by being careful. Don't allow the fear to spiral off into anxiousness and anger and sadness or depression. Avoid those feelings. Those aren't helpful. The fear is. And when you're feeling overwhelmed, recognize it's a legitimate feeling with all that's happening to you. But make sure when the oxygen mask drops, you put it on yourself so you're going to be there later to help with your children and anybody else that might need you. So that's the idea of taking the wheel and controlling how you feel. I hope if you do find yourself with time that you do some of the things that I suggested that helps make life better for you. And when you're struggling and you're gasping for air, make sure you put that oxygen mask on yourself and you take some time for you. Even when everybody else has demands that they're expecting you to fill, you help them to know that you'll be there for them. But you want to be there for them as a strong person, as a positive person. And so every once in a while, you're going to have to take some time out for you. Now I'd like to talk about children. How are your children adapting to what's happening to them? Some of your children may be pushing the boundaries and really want to be with their own friends, and it's challenging about how to explain to them what's going on when we have such difficulty understanding it ourselves. We've never really been faced with an invisible enemy like this. And so it's really challenging to think about what you can do with your kids and what you can do to help your children. And I think part of this is to think about some of the things that I've suggested to you about how you think about who makes you happy. Who are the people you like to be with? What are the things that you like to do? And to try to do the same kinds of activities with your children. Age almost doesn't matter. I think it'd be harder for teenagers to want to sit and do this, at least some of them. But they may be willing because what else are they doing right now? So part of this is like, how do you get them to think about what can you do when you're alone that's enjoyable? What can you do with technology? Because remember now, a lot of our children are far more adept at technology than we are. In fact, I know for my grandson, I mentioned earlier in the show that I play a virtual online chess game or checkers with him on different days of the week. But he also plays video games with his own friends at his own age. And so you can actually play games with your own friends at your own age level, kind of games that you might enjoy doing. You can compete. There's different kinds of games you can compete against each other on the internet. You can have video chats. You can have the basic Zoom technology allows you to put a bunch of people in the room and just kind of have a talk session. I don't know what the topic necessarily is. I know if sports were active, you might be talking about teams, about your high school teams, about your professional teams, about your college teams. You might have none of that's around right now, so you have to be creative again. But I think you want to try to create similar lists for your children so that they know the things that they do. Because at some point, this isn't about you. This isn't about you doing for them. This is about making sure, right? This is about making sure that they understand that they can take the wheel for themselves and to help control their feelings. Think about how important that is in the scheme of things in life, that they learn at an early age that they are responsible and capable of managing their own emotions and about influencing others. Think about who else they know that might feel like it would be important for them to reach out to. Make them feel good about doing for others as they're worried about themselves. If they start thinking about who among their friends might really need a phone call from you, who among your friends would really like it if you called them and asked them to play a game. Not that they need to do that all the time, but again, it's another thing that they can do that they can feel really good about. Try to find ways to help them to figure out how to take the wheel for themselves and to create the feelings that they want. And tell them that we're living with fear. I recognize that. We're all feeling it. It's legitimate. But we need to manage that fear, and we need to respond positively to that fear, and we need to take control so we don't feel angry and sad and lonely. We need to work on those other feelings because we can do that. And encourage them to feel like help is coming. We are going to beat this. I really believe that, actually. I think that the message I'm getting from the briefings that I'm watching from the administration actually are pointing to some very remarkable things that are happening right now in our world. And so I think at some point, it won't be for a while, and I don't know when, but at some point it will be just like the flu or cancer or heart disease or diabetes. There are things already out there today that at some point will end lives. This will be one of them, but it will be well managed, as Dr. Fossey said in the interview the other day, that we're going to know light years more than what we knew just 2 months ago when this comes back around. So I think there's a positive message for everybody out there. I think it's hard to get that message out. I hope I've given you some tools to help with that. And I hope that you all have a good and safe and healthy week and that you take the wheel and control how you feel. And next week, I'm hoping I have Mark Brackett on with the webinar that he's just delivered with a lot of other ideas about how you can be emotionally intelligent during these very stressful and challenging times. Be safe and healthy, everyone. And thanks for listening. You've been listening to WPKN 89.5 FM in Bridgeport, Connecticut, broadcasting from the University of Bridgeport. And this is Chuck Wolf, and you've been listening to the Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel. Bye-bye.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.